Hello and welcome everyone to the Carbohydrate Chronicles, a podcast about glycoscience and glycoscientists. In this show, via a series of interviews, we explore the world of carbohydrate science and innovation from a personal point of view. Your host today is Tamas Shahid, a member of Carbohydrate scientific team. Cyclodextrins are cyclic compounds made up of multiple glucose units linked together to form a ring or a donut-shaped compound. They come in three forms, alpha, beta, and gamma-cyclodextrin, and they are formed by the action of enzymes called cyclodextrin glycosyltransferases from starch. Cyclodextrins have a hydrophobic interior cavity, which makes them useful for encapsulating hydrophobic molecules, and this complexation leads to a bunch of potential uses from solubility improvements through stabilization to taste masking or side effect mitigation. However, developing drug products with cyclodextrins is not always easy and straightforward. And who could tell us more about these challenges than Thorsteinn Loftsson, Professor Emeritus of Pharmaceutical Technology from Iceland University, who is a pioneer in this specific area and has several decades of pragmatic experience. Welcome, Thorsteinn. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thorstein's main research relates not only to cyclodextrins, but pharmaceutical technology in general. He has authored over 250 papers with a cumulative citation index exceeding 30,000. Apart from the academic career, industry has been also present in his life, first supporting lipid pharma, then founding Oculis, and contributed to his huge success. Thorsteinn, when checking your life journey, we can see that you started in Iceland, and apart from some shorter periods, you have always worked from there. Is Iceland not too isolated for you?
Well, not anymore. It was in the old days, but now with this fast travel become a less and less problem. It was difficult in the beginning to access articles and so on. But
and when you were a kid, was it very different being a kid in Iceland?
It was very different here, you know. Of course, Iceland was much more isolated. People didn't go abroad. So I was here. My first trip abroad was when I was 16. So it took me some time, but these days I travel almost once a month to Europe or the US.
How is life there? From right away, it seems that people are super relaxed and calm and cheerful. So is it really like that? And we all should work from Iceland?
I in a way like it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have lived here all my life, basically. I like it. I like the small population. It is easy. The distances are short. It takes me less than 5 minutes to travel from home to work, and to go out of town it takes half an hour, and then you are out in basically nowhere. In a small society like Iceland, it makes it easier to collaborate with people. And I found out that when I started my research, I'd been studying in the US and Denmark. And when I got home, I found out some things were more difficult here in Iceland, but collaboration, do something, formulation, and have it tested in rabbits and humans was much easier over here than in the US, for example. Iceland, you know, if you look at it, we are usually rated one of the happiest nations in the world.
Yeah,
I think Finland is number one, and we have been like number 3 or something like that.
It really sounds like, you know, like a very cozy, familiar environment in Iceland. Speaking of family, your life is devoted to science. Does it come from the family, or you're the first one who have gone this road?
I think maybe in basic science, I think I'm the first one. Of course, my father and my grandfather, they were in science, they were engineers, and so they worked with science. And my father was designing bridges and so on. my grandfather was working as an engineer on ships and so on. So of course they were technically orientated, but basic science is. I think I'm the first one in the family.
And pharmaceutical industry was your first choice, or how did you ended up in this industry?
Well, when I finished, we call it junior college. I liked science. I liked natural sciences, and I had to figure out how to continue. And pharmacy was a mixture of chemistry, biology, anatomy, and so on. And I liked the education. I really liked it. So I decided to go and study pharmacy. Later on, I found out that I didn't want to work in a pharmacy or anything like that. It was a routine, and then I decided to continue and get a further education, and I got a degree, PhD degree in pharmaceutical chemistry, and have been working on drug delivery, drug formulations, and drug pharmacokinetics since I got my PhD.
So this kind of mental stimulation and continuous challenges are necessity for you to enjoy the work?
It's very, very important. And one thing is also which I like. I went into university and started as an assistant professor here in Iceland right after I got my PhD. And what I liked with to be a faculty member over here is it is always changing. Of course, you have teaching responsibilities, and that is mainly during the fall semester and the spring semester. Then in between, you had free time to do research, and also it offers you a possibility of traveling. So of course, salaries within academia is lower than in industry, but it offers you more freedom.
And is your passion and devotion to learn new things what brought you to Copenhagen and later to Kansas?
Yeah, when I was here, I took the first 2 years of pharmacy education here in Iceland. But then we had to, at that time, so I had to get a master's degree in pharmacy. I had to go to Copenhagen or some other. And that is what I did. I spent 3 years in Copenhagen. And then after Copenhagen, I went to University of Kansas in the US, where I got my PhD degree in pharmaceutical chemistry. And after that, I was back to Iceland, and the conditions were not perfect in such a small country. So I spent 3 to 6 months every year at the University of Florida, where I was working also for about 10 years or so. So just to keep me, you could say, informed, so I wouldn't keep me up to date, so I knew what was going on in the field. And also, at that time, we didn't have the internet, and the University of Florida had a very good library, so I could spend time in the library reading articles and so on, and keep myself up to date in the science. So that was also very important.
So all these travels provided you a very good foundation, and I guess a good initial collaboration network, because you become known both in the States and here in the Europe.
It is, and also I learned about startup companies, and I learned about them. So later on, after I had established myself here in Iceland and had a small research group and had grants and so on, and then I decided to establish similar companies or small companies here in Iceland. I started with one which was called Cyclops, and then it was actually taken over by Decode Genetics, which is a company here in Iceland, and they planned to go into drug development and so on. They didn't work out for them, so that was it. Then we established a company called Oculis, which has been doing very well. So it's on NASDAQ already now. So it is doing very well. It has several ongoing phase 3 clinical studies of different drugs. So that is going very well. And then we had the third company called lipid pharmaceuticals, which is totally different, which was based on marine lipids and not associated with cyclodextrin or anything like that. So it is always like that. You just have to try again and again and again and never give up. And then you will succeed in that.
Get it. So you're very persistent in your work and achieving your goals.
Yeah, you have to be like that. You have to be like that. There is technology which we have been working on, which is the foundation of Oculus. It's topical drug delivery to the back of the eye. It's based on cyclodextrin nanoparticles and small microparticles. And it took us, about 25, 30 years to optimize it and make it work. We formulated it, make some hydro formulations, we tested in the rabbits and then in humans, and then we had to just take one step backwards and make it better and try again. And this we have done it many, many times. Of course, it was a little bit slow process because we were also teaching and doing other things. We were not full-time in this. But little by little, it worked. And we filed a patent some years ago on this technology and so on. So this is working very well for us.
I think it's a wonderful example. I mean, 25 to 30 years, even on the pharmaceutical development time scale, that's a long time, but it pays off. And now you're at the door of going to the market with that formulation. So
well, in that case, we had to not only study how to formulate the drugs, we had to study and figure out why was not the technology working? What are the barriers in the eye? Why are we not able to deliver drugs from the surface of the eye to the retina, for example? So we had to understand that it was different types of barriers. We had to understand how they work. We had to address it in our formulation, how to address each and every barrier. And once we had done that, we were able to succeed. We were able to deliver enough of the drug to the back of the eye, to the retina, to have a therapeutic effect.
Let's take a step back from the present and go back to the origins. So, do you remember your first interaction with cyclodextrins? How you met them?
I remember that very well. I was then, it was one of the time I was in Florida, maybe middle of the 1980s. And I was working with soft drugs at that time. And I was working in Professor Nicholas Bodor research team. And he had this he has this great interest in soft drugs. And then he was developing drugs to deliver to the brain. And they had two drawbacks. They were very lipophilic, so they didn't dissolve in water at all, almost. And then when you had dissolved them, they degraded very rapidly. So we had these two problems. And I tried all kinds of things and different complexes and all kinds of things. And then we heard about a person called Joseph Pita. And we learned that he had synthesized 2-hydroxypropyl beta-cyclodextrin, which he was testing in his laboratory at NIH. Asked him to send us a couple of grams of his cyclodextrin derivative, and we tested that on this very insoluble, very unstable drug, and surprisingly, cyclodextrins, the complexation, both stabilized the drug and also increased the solubility of the drug in water. And that was the first time I worked with cyclodextrins. And then, by then, after I got this, got these fantastic results, I basically, little by little, switched from the pro drugs and soft drugs and so on into drug formulations.
So that's a 40-year-old relationship. That's that's a very long time.
Yeah, it's a long time, almost 40 years since I started this cyclodextrins venture. So, but it was fantastic. Later on, I visited Joseph Pitha at NIH and so on. He was a very, very nice fellow. I don't know, maybe he's still alive. I don't know. But he was a very, very nice guy. And it was great. And thanks to him, I'm working with cyclodextrin still today.
That's a great story. Great way to start a career. If you think about your research, what is the root of fascination? What is the source of joy? What is the driver of your passion? What do you enjoy most in your work?
Is most enjoyable or most pleasant is when things start to work. Of course, when you're doing research and so on, in most cases, you don't succeed really. You get half there. But when you are able to get something to work in humans in the end, that is fantastic, That is just fantastic. And I remember what we were working on was dexamethasone. And the Japanese did a very good job. They tested our eye drops. In this case, we got really good effect in humans. And when we got these results, then we really got happy and it was really successful. And that is, when we got that, I think that is the time when I was most pleased with my research and so on. So to get something to work in humans and then get it into phase 3 and hopefully to the market, that is very satisfying in this field of science.
Yes, I can imagine. That's probably a dream coming true for everyone who develops drugs. So yeah, if we look at Oculis, which is your current company and that's listed on NASDAQ, that's an incredible accomplishment. Was this in your dreams from the very beginning? I don't know, when you started working in your 30s, did you have something like that as a long-term goal in mind to I don't know, create a company or bring a drug to the market, or it just happened?
It just happened. Basically, what you want to do when you start as an academician is to work your way up from assistant professor to associate professor, and then to full professor. And to do that, you need publication in scientific journals and so on. But and then you start a company and you think about it. Maybe main interest is to try to get some other people interested in what you are doing and get funds to do the research. But to get it on the internet, to get something on NASDAQ, it was never. I never thought about that. That it was far out. I didn't think of it. It was not something I was aiming at all. I can tell you a little bit maybe about Oculis. We established that in 2003. Einar Stefánsson, which was professor of ophthalmology here at university, and I established it in 2003, and we were working little by little because we were mainly using grants, and we were had other jobs as well. We were faculty members and so on. There was not full time. It was not a full-time job, and we were doing this research and in 2013 or 14. And then we had to figure out, we finished it. We were able to get through phase 1 and phase 2A part of the clinical trials. But then we had to go into phase 2B. And we found out that it did cost us $30 to $50 million to do this study, and there were no grants available for that amount of money. You couldn't find anywhere, and then we had to look for venture funds, and it took us a couple of years to find funds. We went here, got some local venture funds to prepare the company for the bigger or foreign investors, you could say. Went to the FDA and with some plans and got them approved by the FDA. It was actually our plans what we needed to do to get it into the drug, this dexamethasone eye drops, into phase 2B, and then into humans, and they were very, very helpful. It was just these two professors from Iceland and maybe 20 to 40 specialists at the FDA. We had a meeting one afternoon in Boston, and it was really eye-opening meeting. And after that, we knew exactly what is needed. We could figure out exactly how much money we needed, because we knew how many patients, we knew how many dogs we needed for the tox studies, and so on and so on. And then we could calculate it, and then we had to look for this venture fund, and we went to these places like in the US and in Europe. Then we got a call from Basel in Switzerland, from Novartis venture fund. And it took them about half a year, about 6 months, to go through our documents and everything we had done and so on. And then we signed with them a contract with them, or they took they took over our company, Oculis. And we learned a lot what to do and how to do things by that. So if I needed to do it again, I would do it. We would be much faster to do it, because it was a learning process while we were doing this. It was a learning process, and like always, and we fail, and then we have to start again. We have failed, and we have to prepare ourselves a little bit better and do it again and again and again. It's like always like that. There are so many people who try something like this and they give up. But you should never give up.
Yes, I guess this kind of learning process is there is no really other good way to learn it than on the field. As I listen to you, Thorsteinn, I realize that your experience is very unique, because you're very active in the education field with all the students, but you also have very real life experience in the pharma industry, in translational science, building something from the benchtop to humans. Is any of these works that you enjoy more? The teaching, the business, the formulation stuff, or you just like the unique synergy of all of this?
I like the science, basically, and what I'm doing in the lab. That is what I like. I don't like the business very much. I'm not a businessman, but so when it comes to the business, I leave it to some other people usually.
If we think about, so if we, I don't know, switch topic from science and lab work, so what do you enjoy doing if you're not in the lab and you're not dealing with science?
I do enjoy. A couple of years ago, we bought a small cabin in the country. So my wife and I, we go there frequently. I go there sometimes on weekends, and sometimes for a little bit longer time. So we like to stay there and relax and walk around and be in the nature. So that is maybe my main hobby right now. And also over here, one thing about Iceland is we have lots of this geothermal energy. We have lots of hot springs, hot water. So we have lots of swimming pools, and I enjoy going to the swimming pool and swim a little bit. And I usually frequently do that in the morning after I come to my office. I answer all of the emails and take care of all the things I need to take care of in the morning. And then I go for a short swim, and then I come back and carry on working.
That's a great daily routine, I think. Finally, a question, Thorsteinn, that I'm asking all the guests. So if you could have dinner with any historical figure or celebrity or even fictional character, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Of course, there are lots of good scientists there, which I would like to talk to and learn from and understand what makes them tick and why they succeeded. But if I could select one scientist and one other type of person, one person I would really like to meet is, of course, Jesus Christ. So I would like to learn from him. But also from a scientist, there are scientists like Marie Curie. There are scientists. Thomas Alva Edison was, of course, more flamboyant, and so there are scientists like that which I really would like to meet and talk to. And I think in all cases, it is like I said before, it's just never give up. Just try again and again until you succeed. I'm sure that these people will say that they just never gave up.
I hope you enjoyed the second episode of Carbohydrate Chronicles today, delivered to you by Carbohydrate. We talked with Thorsteinn Loftsson, professor at University of Iceland and expert in drug delivery with a specialization to cyclodextrins. As we learned from Thorsteinn, it's important to find challenge in our career, never stop learning, focus on balance between the good ideas, the freedom, but also do work tirelessly. Thorsteinn found a very unique harmony between academia and industry, always focusing on practical applications with the ultimate goal of helping humans. And as we heard multiple times, he never gave up, and we can all see how this paid off in the end. Thank you for being with us today, Thorsteinn. I truly enjoyed our talk, especially since we haven't met in person for several years now, but I really hope to see you again face-to-face soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Thorsteinn, for kindly accepting our invitation and sharing your personal point of view about some fascinating topics. And thank you all for listening to this interview. Next week, in the next episode of Carbohydrate Chronicles, we'll talk with Jose Manuel Garcia Fernandez, research professor at University of Seville and expert in carbohydrate supramolecular chemistry. Your host was Tomáš Šahajda from Carbohydrate. I hope you will join me in our next session too. See you in 1 week. Goodbye.